Hello.
Hey, glad that we can come back from break and continue chatting. And something that we were just talking about that I thought was really interesting was you were talking about how you wanted to be more adaptable. And then with adaptability, you also were talking about also being assertive in the workplace as well. And so um, when I think about the two sides of kind of your overall hope, the relationships kind of bleeding into clinical competency, I'm just wondering if you can shed some light on maybe how you see adaptability and then also assertiveness kind of working together, because I don't know, they might be a little bit at odds as well. So I'm curious what your thought is.
Yeah, I think for me, when I think about adaptability, it's about am I able to hear what this situation needs, this context needs, and what this other person is asking? And am I able to be flexible or reorientate myself enough to accommodate some of their needs? But with assertiveness, I think it's also about can I identify my needs and can I
Hmm.
say what's enough and what my boundaries are?
Hmm.
And so for me, I guess the way that I think of it is kind of like assertiveness and flexibility to go together means I'm able to hear the other person and I'm able to adapt and compromise with them, but I'm also able to hold my ground for what I need. And I'm not giving up on what I think is okay or my needs or my opinion on
Yeah,
something just because I feel uncomfortable by another person, if that
gotcha.
makes sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And it kind of connects with what you were saying previously about how you feel at the workplace you're fairly, I think you referred to it as like a little more passive than you might be other places or whatever, that it's something that you feel is pretty strong in the workplace, that you're a lot more passive than you might want to be. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, it's really interesting that you said that because um, I'm in school, and something that we do for school is like these assessments, because I'm in an assessment class right now, and one of it is forget what assessment it was, but one of the assessments, like how cooperative, like uncooperative to cooperative, and versus like not assertive to like assertive you are. And I got my like scaling marks back from that. And it's like I tend to be like very cooperative. I like really want to get along with the other person. And I tend to be more passive into kind of like assertiveness when I need to be. And the last thing I will do is like compete or fight someone for something. And I think that's a very good representative. It's almost like, oh, I wish I could like fight. But like it was a really good representative because I looked at it and I'm like, yep, that's me. And it's very much like I want to get along with other people. And I have this sense of like I really need almost to feel like it sounds kind of shallow, but I really want to be liked by other people and I want to make sure other people always like me. And I
Mm-hmm.
think part of that is if I'm too assertive or if I step beyond assertive, I'll automatically be disliked.
Hmm. Have you had experiences where that might have happened, like in past workplaces, or maybe not even in work, where you might have been assertive, or you mentioned making my needs known and my boundaries, and then that kind of bleeding into like a place where you might be on the outs? Like, has there been a situation like that in the past?
Well, what's coming to mind for me is not even like work, but like high school. And just like the people that I guess I was like quote unquote friends with, I don't really even know if they're really friends, is like the way that they saw the world, the things that they wanted to do didn't really align with me and the way that I saw the world and the things that I wanted to do in life. But if I didn't align with them and I didn't like do kind of what they wanted to do all the time, I didn't have friends. I just
Mm,
was alone. I just kind of had to do my own thing. I didn't
yeah.
belong. And so it's almost like this idea of like, okay, I just like need to give up whatever I think is okay and I need to go along with what the group is doing because the majority rules are like the other person's take over kind of like the
Yeah.
show, I guess. And so
Totally.
it was
Totally.
very much like that. And I remember spending like my last year, my grade 12 year with no, well, like not no friends, like people were acquaintances and they were very nice to me. And like it was mutual, but I didn't have any close friends.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, I mean, yeah, it sounds like that was a pretty rough experience, if that's fair to say. Like, yeah.
Yeah. I think at the time it was kind of like, oh, well, whatever type thing. And it was
Yeah.
very much like disassociation. But I
Yeah.
think like even right now, as I recall it, like to you, and I'm recounting the experience in my head, I'm like, that's kind of sad to think of
Hmm.
it like that. It's kind of a sad experience.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think like I'm glad you used this word because I feel like it's a word that you've used a couple times, which I like, and I think I want to just explore a little bit. But you mentioned belonging, how you had that one friend at work that like they might bring up fuzzy peaches or whatever I think it was like and just
Mhm.
having those niceties were really like part of like, oh, like you want to talk to me and like you want me to come to your office and I feel like I belong here. And so I just want to like maybe explore that idea of belonging a little bit with you. Like, what places do you feel a deep sense of belonging? Like, whether childhood, adolescence, wherever. Could be historical, could be present.
Hmm. I think that's a really good question. I don't think anyone's asked me that, Scott. I think school is a place where I belong because I've always
Yeah,
been good in school. And I've
right.
always found it people that have like minds, like they think very similar to me or they're very curious like me.
Yeah.
Well, like not all people, but a lot of the people, especially once I went into my undergrad and now in like grad school, a lot of people in like grad school, they want to also learn. Like they're also very curious and I can geek out about like a counseling theory or a concept about humanity, which
Yeah.
I couldn't do like just necessarily with anyone. So I
Yeah.
think like school is a really big place where I find a lot of belonging
Yeah.
because I can show up as myself and there's a lot of people that want to engage in the same way.
Oh,
I
cool.
think another place where I find a sense of belonging is this job that I'm currently at. Not even in terms of like the coworker or the people like around me, just in terms of my role as like an addictions counselor. Is like I can go into these sessions with my clients and I feel like I belong
Mm,
in terms of yeah, I have some expertise. Yes, I can give you concepts and ideas, but we're really having a discussion. That's one thing I always tell my clients, especially the ones who have like power imbalances. I'm like, tell me where you want to go with this. If
mm.
I say something and it doesn't align with you, I want you to tell me that. I want you to practice being able to share that with me in like a
Wow.
safe space. So
Yeah.
like those places where there's mutuality is is belonging for me.
Yeah. 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 That's good. I'm glad you brought up like as much as we focused on work, I was kind of like I had a little spark of just like, oh yeah, like when you mentioned work is like a place where you like have belonging, but also like want to have maybe more, like be more fully yourself in that place. Because I mean, we've talked about work a whole bunch, and like I'll maybe ask some questions outside of work, but it just shows how much you love that place and you care
I,
about it and you want to see a future there, right? Like I think that really
Mhm.
just kind of like resonates. Yeah, yeah, which is good. Yeah. I guess one of the things that you mentioned um as far as increasing your confidence, increasing like your feeling like you got this um at the workplace, I'm just wondering if you could give me um I'll just kind of get back. You gave yourself a bit of a scaling of confidence in the workplace. You said you would be like around a 4 to a 6, um, but then all of a sudden you're reading some of the feedback from one of your superiors for school for practicum, and he would have rated you much higher, like a 7, 8, right? And I'm wondering if you can share a little bit of insight into that, the way you view yourself as opposed to the way others might view you. I don't know if you have any insight into that.
Yeah. I guess like I'm thinking about a recent event that happened at work. And in this recent, like, so I signed up, I volunteered myself for the program development committee, where we really develop some of our group work, what the slides are based on, what we're teaching our clients. Just because, like, I think some of it's just absolutely ridiculous and outdated. Besides the point, though.
Yeah.
In this program development group, at first, like, it's like for me, when I think about developing a program for other people, for clients, I'm like, we need to know what the objectives are, and we need to know why we're teaching what we're teaching. Like, what is the importance of every question that we're asking, every skill that we're teaching, every activity that we're engaging them in. Like, we as counselors need to be able to justify why it's on that screen if we're going to show it to our clients. So for me, that's a lot of, can I play devil's advocate? Can I question this? Can I ask these things? Can we have a rich discussion about this? And I don't know that like a lot of my coworkers feel the same way. And so I
Hmm.
think for myself, I perceive myself to be like, oh, like this, like very enthusiastic, wanting to create, like almost overbearing person. And as a result, what I feel like my perception of other people is like I'd ask these questions. Like today, I was asking these questions like, well, do you think this question should be here? Do you not think this question should be? Well, why do you think this question should be here? How do you think this is going to help the clients? Like that kind of stuff. And I
Yeah.
think it like came to like a point where I felt like almost like I was dominating the conversation. And I like everyone was just kind of like listening to me talk. And it's like if you need me to stop, just let me know at any time. And one of my coworkers, I know she likes to joke, and I know she was just joking around, but she's like, Nora, stop talking. And then it was just
Mhm.
like quiet. And it was like in that moment when I was just like, yeah, I think I'm like talking too much. And it was like, okay, I'm just gonna be quiet for a while. And then they were going forward, they were discussing more of the material, but there wasn't any of like justification why something should or should not be. And for me, it was almost like, I don't even want to be in this group anymore. I don't want to teamwork anymore. I can go do case notes. I'd rather be doing case notes. So it's almost like that shift.
Okay. And it was a pretty quick transition that you kind of went to
Oh yeah, it's
like
like in my brain like this.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can see. Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's also a good example. You kind of said that you kind of explore your world through kind of having full conversation. You mentioned being like devil's advocate kind of thing, and kind of like exploring that stuff. I wonder if you could kind of give me a little bit of like, I don't know, maybe whether that's learned kind of behavior or whether that's something that you kind of had in your childhood or is role modeled from your mom or sister or other people around you that you kind of explore the world because it sounds like you're very analytical, which is great. And
That's so funny.
but you
The only reason I say that's so funny
yeah.
is because my grandmother, from my dad's side of the family, nonetheless. So my parents got like split when I was like in preschool, grade one, very young. But we used to go week to week. And anyway, my grandmother on my dad's side, she was like really the only other person at my dad's place when we would go to my dad.
Yeah.
And she passed away, but like I look a lot like her. I also have her name in my
Oh,
like full name, and people would like say like I'm mini version of her. I'm a like her in a lot of ways. And
oh,
it was really and it's really funny because my grandmother on my dad's side was very curious. She used to ask a lot of questions all the time.
yeah.
And me growing up, like my parents getting divorced, me not really understanding things, I was like asking a lot of questions. And I remember my mom telling me like, because I said so. Why do you need to know? Like
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
or they'd say, "Look, you're just like," so my grandmother, we used to call her Dadi. So they'd say like, "Oh, you're just like your Dadi," all the time, and like things like that, or like, "You're just like Ma." And so like I think it started at a very young age, and then it became kind of ingrained in my identity because people in my family would say things like, "Oh, you're just like her. You ask a lot of questions." Like curiosity, what like Nora's always curious. She always needs to know something. And it
Mm,
just like got reinforced
okay.
as a
Yeah.
result, is like my perception of it.
Yeah. And what's your perception of that? Is it kind of like in a congenial kind of like, oh yeah, that's a part of me kind of thing? Or is there a little bit of like resistance to that? Like, oh shucks, I'm being so such and such a person, or is it kind of self-accepting of that? I'm curious.
I think it's a bit of both because I really love my grandmother and I like always do aspire to be a lot like her because she's very loving, very caring. So part of me is like, huh, I have this part of her in me and like
Mhm.
it's cool. And like I love asking questions and I love being curious about things. But on the other hand, it was also received as because I said so. Can you stop asking questions? And it wasn't always
Mm.
genuinely like, stop asking questions. It's like, no, stop asking questions, like you're freaking annoying type things. I think I learned also that it's not always like widely accepted. So that
Okay,
makes me hesitant at times to
gotcha.
ask questions and like how
Yeah,
I'm asking questions. Not even like how, but like what questions I'm asking. And
yeah.
so I think I notice it, and as soon as other people don't seem receptive to my questioning or what I'm saying, I
Mm.
kind of like pull in, like pull back almost.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, interesting. Has there been any places, whether work, not work, childhood, school, where you were really encouraged, where you felt fully yourself asking questions and being really curious and analytical? Is there any, and it could have just been one day or a moment where somebody really recognized that power of that.
Research.
Okay.
Research. So I got a
Okay.
research award in my undergrad, and I got to do research with one of my like one of the professors there at the time. We did congruence couple therapy research. And I just remember research, you can ask questions, and the whole thing is to ask more questions about asking questions. And so I
Yeah.
know people hate, like, are not a big fan of like the nitty-gritties of research. And I have to tell you, it's a hate-love relationship when it comes to research because like I hate doing some aspects of it, but like I could not imagine life without research, which is part of like my motivation for doing something like a thesis and wanting to
Yeah.
explore things and wanting to be able to ask questions in a place where it makes sense to ask questions without there
Wow.
being like what it's almost like why are you not asking questions in the
Uh-huh.
research environment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the yeah, that's the premise that you enter into.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, great. Yeah. Good to hear. I just have one more question. We're probably going to wrap it up right away. But like one more question about that. Knowing that about yourself, that you're curious by nature, that it kind of comes with like the territory, and knowing kind of futuristically like the areas of interest that you have doing your thesis, which is like that's so great to hear. And knowing that also that you felt really kind of like you belong in school, asking questions and all the theory and everything. Um, Knowing all of those things, I'm wondering, we set some like kind of workplace goals, saying hi to people, being more flexible, adaptable, also assertive. I'm wondering if for yourself, if there's any sort of kind of interpersonal kind of goals that you would have, maybe not even goals, aspirations, to kind of move towards kind of self-empathy, or when maybe you're at the workplace and people say like, oh, like might say that comment, oh, you're talking so much or asking so many questions, where you can look within yourself and kind of accept that and have some self-empathy that, you know what, this is who I am and I like it. I'm just wondering if there's something, some sort of goal or aspiration that you could have within yourself to just recognize and accept that as well.
To be very honest with you, theoretically, it sounds fantastic. Like, I think that's a fantastic idea, theoretically speaking. I think
Yeah.
when it comes to application of myself, I can do it for a period of time, but then I struggle to maintain that.
Mm,
And I think the maintenance piece is partly of what brings me here today is how do I maintain kindness to myself? How do I maintain my sense of openness and communicating with other people that I may not necessarily get along with? I think that's where I struggle. So, yeah, I think I could be kinder to myself. And absolutely, I think I could come up with a few things that I can remind myself of. And I think
yeah.
in and of it, like just what I'm trying to say
Yeah.
is I think this conversation in and of itself is such a good reminder of I am curious and it's part of my identity and that's okay. And I think this conversation is something that I will mentally like check in with when I'm asking a lot of questions and I feel like that hey, Nora, stop asking questions kind of thing come up. Because I
Yeah.
think this in and of itself is a good reminder of that. I think
Mhm.
in terms of specific phrases or being kinder to myself, I don't know what that looks like, and I don't know if that's
Right.
maintainable in and of itself, if I'm completely honest.
Awesome. Yeah, yeah. But it might be like, is it something that you're like interested in exploring?
Yeah, I'd be open to working on it with you.
Great, great. Sounds good. All right. Well, I think we'll call it there and we'll book something for in the future. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. We'll talk later.